It's all a swaying in the breeze. But one soul lies anxious, wide awake, fearing all manner of ghouls, hags, and wraiths. For your dolly Polly sleep has flown. Don't dare let her tremble alone, for the witcher, heartless cold, paid in coin of gold. He comes, he'll go, leave naught behind but heartache and woe. Deep, deep woe. It's all silent for the night. Cows turned in as daylight dies. But when soul lies anxious by.
Salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another week of the Gwentlemen Talkshow 2K18 edition. That's what we're going by now. As always, I'm joined by the lovely Swim, who is apparently now a Vreemed main.
Well, I played him twice. Well, I played him more than twice, but I lost a lot.
We also have the lovely Crash Overlord joining us. And the ever-static Shaggy.
Hello.
Well, I want to call you Shaggy Nuts, but, you know, it's Shaggy these days.
No, don't worry about it.
Yeah, what's wrong with nuts?
Yeah.
Like, for example, a coconut is a fantastic example of a shaggy nut.
That is, that is a good
Swim
example.
is exactly right, man.
Nuts are very healthy.
It takes
and
a dirty
good
mind
for
to
you.
think anything else, man.
In fairness, some people are allergic to nuts, so you know. We had to. I guess you had to change your name. But so this week, the most exciting news is that we got a hotfix. This is like the least exciting Gwent news ever, and this is the most exciting news of the week. So we can talk
Vreemed is
about
a leader now. That's crazy.
I guess that is quite exciting news.
Yeah, you can do all kinds of things with Vreemed. You can build a soldier deck. It's great.
Man, I haven't actually tried him. I have to play Vreemed as a leader. Sounds super sweet.
Better get your time in with him fast. It's not going to be there for long.
Yeah.
Well,
See,
about 3 weeks maybe or so until the next hotfix, right? If we're
Yeah, I mean, you know, they have the challenger coming up, right? So they can't make any changes now because the people in the open, the people in the open need to play on the current patch.
I wonder
And
if
current
someone's
patch is Vreemed.
Dude, I would slam him as a leader if I could.
Like what, ban Scoia'tael and just run Vreemed. This is
So
like
Vreemed-
Freddy
Vreemed
strats.
slams Scoia'tael. Vreemed is Scoia'tael counter.
The Vreemed dream. I don't know. I'll stop. But before we get on to all of these things, we did also have the end of the pro ladder. Not pro ladder. Actually, well, we had the pro ladder and the regular ladder. And regular ladder, as you know, got pushed back 2 days. Some people were very, very, very unhappy about this. Like, very unhappy. And some people were like, yeah, this is great. Now I can get GM. So, you know, we have kind of two sides of the coin. We almost have like a coin flip, you could say, that makes people very mad.
Gosh.
So,
say a coin
I
flash.
had to grind an extra like 4 hours because of that push.
It's like-
Man, I had to play like 5 more games. It was really annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
is this to
didn't care.
maintain like top 1,000 or whatever?
Yeah.
What was your goal?
I got bumped out of 250 and I lost like the first 2 games and I was struggling for a while to get it back. I mean, to be perfectly honest, like the fact that they pushed it back isn't the worst thing ever. It's mostly that it was kind of like, you know, I mean, it was kind of on top of so many other things, including the news about the Pro Ladder being launched. Most people were saying way too early at the same time, which it just kind of, I guess, made it a bit of the last straw situation.
Also, the fact that they released the news about pushing the, end date back until like 1 hour until it should have ended or so. Like,
No. It was like 10 minutes, dude.
Yeah, 10 minutes. That's much more reasonable. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for misinformation.
I mean, I feel like you say, it was last minute, but it's kind of understandable because I suppose they didn't know when the hotfix was going to be, and they didn't want to have days of the new patch without the hotfix. So that was, I suppose, the thought process. For me, I feel like it's neither here nor there. If you had 1 or 2 days where we still had these bugs with regular ladder, it's not going to be consequential to the final, top 1,000 realistically.
Yeah.
Sure. So I feel like, it was a, oh no, we've got this patch. We want the season to have the hotfix. Let's push it back. But equally, what they could have just done is ended it and then just had like a day when there was no rank ladder. Like, I don't really feel like that would have caused like too much trouble. If they just ended it on the 8th and started the next ladder on the 10th.
Yeah, they could have done that as well. I don't know. I mean, like I said, most people really wouldn't have had as much of a problem with it if it just wasn't already just. I don't know. Like, everyone's really on edge right now, right? It's not a great time to be an r/Gwent reader.
But to appease everybody, we now have premium weekends. Ooh. So for those of you who don't know, if you open a keg, the 5th card is guaranteed to also be premium. So you'll get a choice of 3 premiums. I didn't realize this because I got like a rune, and it was just, that were like the ones that don't have premium animations yet. And they just they kind of glitter a bit. And I was just like, well, I could get 2 premiums or like a rune. So I'm going to get a premium. And then it turns out the rune was premium and I didn't even have the rune. And I was mad. But yeah, so at the moment, if you open your kegs, you're getting premiums. And literally, I thought this was a bug. Like, I was like, oh, they've CDPR's track record with bugs has not been great in the last month. So I was like, they've accidentally given everyone premiums.
Well, I've heard that if you open a keg, you might also just get nothing.
Wait, what?
I have not heard this.
I was streaming as soon as the patch hit, and there were some people in chat saying that kegs were completely bugged out and just not working. So it's fun. I just decided I'd rather wait another 6 hours.
To be fair, people in Twitch chat are not the most reliable source of information.
That's also true.
I've learned that one the hard way.
Mm.
I have a question. Right. Because Reemed is currently a leader, if you mill him, do you get 200 scrap? Because he's gold, right?
He's still an epic. He still has the epic gem.
So he's an epic gold leader.
Yeah, he's an epic leader.
He has the purple gem.
So even though he's gold, you don't get like full. Oh man, because otherwise you could just mill him and be like, I'll just get another silver. Like I feel like that's like the silver lining. Apparently, he only gives 80. Oh no,
the leader lining.
So yeah, that is the current news. So did anyone have any fun on the pro ladder in the last few moments? Any epic wins and magical creates and lucky top decks? No.
I lost to create Adida.
I played Consume. Sometimes people had answers, sometimes they didn't.
Yeah, I played Consume today. I know I played against Consume today, and then I had my Swears round 1. I was just sitting there, let him make all his neckers, and then it was like, oh, I see that you've run out of Necker Warriors. Have you missed my friend Swears? It feels really good. It's like my favorite thing to do.
It does. I myself haven't actually played that much on a ladder since the last pro ladder season ended.
But you gotta prepare for your Gwent Open 3.
Yeah, like ladder. Yeah, pro ladder is the best way to do it. Of course. I mean, I'm gonna meet real opponents who play real decks, and I'm gonna be able to prepare for the tournament that way.
Yeah.
Seems good, man.
No Shupe. Nothing people wouldn't bring.
Oh, yeah, so you think people wouldn't bring Shupe to the Open now?
Oh no! Wait, actually, if it's played on pro ladder, they might, right?
Yeah. Why wouldn't you?
So Shaggy, since obviously you're going to the Gwent Open, that's going to be happening very soon. That's something we can discuss a little bit. Now, you are obviously you can't discuss your strategies. You want to, but what do you expect the meta in the Gwent Open 3 to be like?
I think like the lineups and the decks people are gonna bring are gonna revolve a lot around consume. Like, are you gonna bring consume? Are you gonna hate consume? Are you gonna just not bring consume and try to not get hated out, but also not hate it yourself because like other people might just also not bring it? So it's really quite a complex topic that, like, I have to think about my lineup a bit more before I can be sure. I mean, I've got some decks prepared, but. Yeah, it's quite, I think, some mind games going on there.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be even a little bit similar to the Gwent Open 1, which you won, which, you know, it's basically the same situation with dwarfs, right? Basically, do you bring dwarfs? Do you play around them? Like, what's the strategy going to be? It's typically the same types of counters as well.
Yeah, it's kind of similar, actually. That's true.
I mean, give Shaggy his due. He brought great swords, right, last time, and that was something that no one expected. And I loved it. I love great swords as an archetype. Obviously, I feel like maybe not this time around. I'm thinking maybe we avoid great swords this time around. But in general, it's a fun archetype. So I think it'll be interesting to see what the players have up their sleeves in terms of new sorts of decks, and especially tournament decks, because tournament meta is often quite different to like ladder meta.
Yeah, I mean, so let me ask you this, Shaggy. Do you expect anybody to not ban Squirtle?
I think it's rather unlikely. I could see it happening. For example, just people not really preparing for consume and just banning it because they think like consume is a stronger deck than Squirtle.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think that most of the bans will go on Squirtle, and we will see some on monsters, and that's basically the only two factions that we will see bans on, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty much going to be it. And I mean, Dwarfs is probably a stronger deck than Consume, but Consume just has, because it's so binary, because if you don't ban it, you have to prep your entire strategy around it. And if you bring it, you have to be prepared for those strategies. That's kind of why it's going to, for everyone kind of wondering why Consume is the subject of debate when Dwarfs is a stronger deck.
On the topic of, well, say the reverse of the best two decks or the best deck even, what do you think is the faction that's like not even... people aren't even considering to run, actually, because you can only bring 4, right? So which one do you not bring? Because the other factions all have even-ish deck strength, right? You've got Henselt, you've got Bears, Nova, whatever kind of SK you can think of, X-Men.
Yeah, then, I think so. Yeah,
it's got to be Skellige, right?
You think?
I mean, it's tough. I mean, you can't not bring Henselt to a tournament with the coin flip, which you can control, right? Or do you think that might not be the case?
Well, I think it's a bit less the case this patch. Like, Henselt did get maybe just a bit weaker in comparison to other decks, but I think with the red coin, Henselt should still be pretty good for tournaments. Yeah, and I think that there's not really a faction that nobody is considering for the tournament. Yeah. I think that we will see all 5 factions represented, depending on what strategy people will go for with the lineup.
Yeah, I think in terms of like the weakest faction right now, like you said, Crash, you were pointing on, it's definitely like in up to debate which of those 3 factions ends up being the weakest in the tournament format.
Mm-hmm. Swizz is also much more common now, which makes Henselt more risky. It makes Consume more risky. And it's actually quite good against Dwarven Agitators as well, because they just Dwarven Agitator something, you just make them discard them all, and then they can't Dwarven Agitator that anymore. So I feel like we'll see him show up, I would expect, at tournaments, and that might shape the meta a little bit in terms of things like Henselt and Consume, especially as, previously when we had Consume, we saw, as Shaggy can attest, some of the worst draws in the history of Gwent in terms of trying to find a Necker.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
It's like, do you really want to live through that again? I don't know.
I
but
mean,
then what other
I
monsters
don't mind, honestly. Like, I even rewatched the games and I noticed like 1 or 2 mistakes that could have won me even that game where I got super unlucky. So I'm not gonna just blame it on my draws or anything. Like, I mean, it can happen with any deck in Gwent that you just draw really awkwardly.
Yeah.
Your opponent draws really well and you lose a game. That's just gonna happen in a card game.
I mean, I think that's an extremely important mentality for anybody who wants to get better, because at the end of the day, you're going to get unlucky sometimes, you're going to get lucky sometimes. What makes you a good player is the ability to, even when you get very unlucky, still have that swing potential of being able to play just well enough to win in those cases.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the other thing you have with tournaments is you have the whole weather meta of whether people whether people bring weather. And because, you have to decide if you think people are going to bring weather, you should bring clears. If you don't think people are bringing weather, you're better off not bringing clears. And then that's kind of the decision. And with Axemen, kind of floating around, some people are running weather variants of Axemen. And there's not a lot of weather clear on ladder. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays a role in the tournament.
Yeah. No, it actually could be. Axemen isn't really something we've discussed. Crash, Shaggy, what do you guys think about Axemen? In terms of this tournament format?
I was playing it the whole day today. The thing is, if you're bringing Axemen, you want to be bringing other decks that can kind of win in similar situations, because Axemen aren't necessarily strong enough to just win if your opponent's got weather clear. Like,
yeah, exactly.
For example, today, like, Ida got created, and I had no chance to win from that point onwards. So if you're banking on the fact that people won't run weather clears, then you want to bank on it even harder. Because if one deck doesn't make it through, then it doesn't matter if the other two do. But there's no two other good decks for tournaments that abuse weather. Like, there are no other two abuse, or even three, weather abusing decks. Gold weather and Hansel, not really a thing. You don't really run it in NG, any NG variant. Dwarves don't need it. There's no spell at all that can abuse it. So, yeah, I don't see it really. Not as a tourney deck.
Yeah, weather's gotten just a little bit power creeped. Obviously, just, with the power of things coming up, and maybe even more importantly, the tempo of things coming up, like dwarfs, because that's really what dwarfs can do. They can really just smash a lot of power in a very few amount of turns, in just like 1 or 2 turns, and that can do a lot in just terms of absolutely forcing out weathers. Do we see this as like maybe being a problem in the futures? Will weathers have to like increase in value a tiny bit, at least in terms of the cards that summon them?
Yeah, I think that weathers are. I'm not saying that they should be increased in value immediately, but I'm thinking that they have fallen off in power quite noticeably this patch. Yeah. So I think that even uncleared weather does do a whole lot less damage than it did last patch. I think you can't just win through an uncleared gold weather, for example, which was in a long round, which was unheard of last patch, basically. So I think that maybe if the game gets power crept even more, then weathers will have to increase in damage dealt as well. Even though some people might not like to hear it.
Yeah, what do you have to say about that, Crash?
Right now, this position where weather is in is probably the best it's been forever, as far as I can remember, anyways, from my going into the game.
And
the thing is,
common.
Yeah, because the thing is, weather before was absolutely overpowered. Like, the only way weather was not winning a game was if your opponent had weather clear, right? But that's really bad, like, for the game, because it's extremely binary. Oh, if he doesn't have weather clear, I win. Oh, if he has weather clear, my golden weather was negated by a bronze card, right? It's not good to have that be in the game. And currently, weather as is at the point where in a long round, it's really strong, not game winning, really strong. And when cleared, you still lose the game when cleared, but nobody runs clear, so that's great. So it's in this position where it's just barely like not too strong, right? It's good enough where it can win you games, but not good enough where it always wins you a game in the long run, which is great for like where you want most cards to be, honestly. Where in their best situation, it is really good, right? So if it gets like buffed, then it's just gonna lead again back to previous patches, like very binary. Oh, my opponent has Death Mold, now I lose. Oh, my opponent doesn't have Death Mold or didn't draw it. Yay, we've won. And there's nothing my opponent can do about it.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with that. But there's one issue, which is basically there are certain archetypes that feel like they're going to be held down in that regard as well. Those, most notably, I would say Eridan and maybe Axemen, since Axemen does feel kind of reliant on weather, at the very least, Skellig Storm and Burna. Do you think that it might be a solution to somehow kind of buff up the cards that are not necessarily attached to the weathers themselves within those archetypes to try to make them a little less dependent on it?
Sure, potentially. The thing is, like, Eridan definitely needs buffs. Eridan is quite behind on strength, but I think Axemen, as I've been playing it the whole day, and they feel really, really strong. Like, I think Axemen are in a pretty good position right now.
Yeah.
Feel very strong if your opponent doesn't have weather clear or 7 removals. You just win the game, and if they have clear, you still have a fighting chance. But yeah, I like Eridan for sure. Eridan has completely fallen off. Their bronzes are weak. Yeah, it's just
I mean, Eridan had still, like, even before that, was kind of in a state where it was definitely somewhat carried by the Iris interaction as well. But yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely a bit of a favorite among the community as an archetype. So it'd be cool to see that one come back again. Although I'm personally, I mean, people are saying, oh, make Eridan great again. Make some of these things they don't feel happy but are nerfed. I'm still in the camp of like wanting things that I've never gotten really a chance to actually be up there. Particularly these new things like Moonlight to just have at least a moment in the sun.
Yeah, I think Moonlight would be really fun. It's worth noting with Axemen that I think it's maybe good in tournaments because if you're going first or second. Like, it's not a great deck if you're going first, but when you win the coin flip and you can react, it's a bit better. The problem, obviously, with it is that you need to wait until your opponent places units to know where the best place is to put your Axemen, so then it gets a bit awkward in that regard. So I don't know. I think, like, if you made weather a bit stronger, that deck would be more consistent because it is a very kind of high risk, high reward sort of deck. So I don't know. Like, high risk, high reward can be good at tournaments if you think, I think if you feel like you're maybe. The question is whether you go high risk, high reward or play it safe, like, consistency, and which is better in tournaments. I don't know. I guess it depends on how you rate yourself versus your opponents.
Yeah, no, it absolutely would.
Yeah, I think like if you think that you would be a bit of a weaker player in comparison to the playing field, you tend to bring more high rolly decks so you can high roll your way to victory, right? And if you think that you're a better player than everyone else, you just can bring the most consistent decks, basically.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, the real meat and bones that people want to hear about is what we all kind of feel about the state of Gwent. I mean, this is something that, for example, last week, we asked, we've asked everyone for the past like 2 or 3 weeks because it's such a recurring topic. But I would love more opinions, and of course, things have changed a little bit. I would say that a lot of people are, disappointed by the hotfix. But how do we feel, Crash and Shaggy, since we have not heard you guys' input yet? How do you feel about the state of the game? Because some people are very pessimistic, and some people are still, hopeful and saying that people are exaggerating. Crash?
Start with me, okay.
Yeah, that's it. Okay,
that's
Shaggy?
it.
No.
So, I mean, I think the hotfix for me has fixed the 2 main problems I had with the patch, which were the shitload of bugs. Sorry, and the fact that spy being created could invalidate the entire decisions that were made before that in a game, basically. So since these 2 issues are fixed, not too unhappy about the state of Gwent currently. I mean, I know that CDPR obviously has rushed the patch and the community is unhappy and stuff, but quite honestly, I don't have enough time to visit Reddit and read the complaint threads and stuff. I just am busy playing the game and busy with life and stuff, so I can't really say too much about it.
Too busy playing the game to browse Reddit.
Yeah.
I was kind of like the day after I ended the stream. I was doing well. Like, I was winning, 70% of games or more or something. And usually I'd be very happy after 6 hours of winning games. I just wasn't today, and I was considering like why was I so frustrated with the game itself? And okay, this is obviously a major part because I was also playing X-Men like for half of the time, definitely. But it felt like the game had become even more binary and extremely matchup dependent.
I felt the same way, but I've been playing Consume.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, if you're not playing dwarves, you're playing a deck that is extremely like either wins or loses depending on 1 or 2 cards that your opponent could or could not could or could not have. And that's just, it doesn't make for fun gameplay because it invalidates pretty much all of the things you did in the game to try and win it. Like, it invalidates all your choice. And I think that's kind of frustrating because, like, dwarves, on the other hand, are... So I kind of personally didn't like the previous patch very much just because I hated playing spies personally. And, you know, every time I saw a person play spies, I would remind myself how much I hated playing as spies, and it would just make me like, ugh. But this patch, like, dwarves, spies as a best meta deck was extremely targetable. We saw that with how we prepped Freddy as well, where we targeted spies because they were extremely linear. Dwarves are also linear, play every game exactly the same, except they don't do anything that is easily targetable other than somewhat swarm, but not really. And and so it leaves you in this position where you're playing versus a deck that's extremely strong, plays the same every single game, and you can't counter it, specifically hard counter it. You can play swears and it'll help your matchups. You can play other things, like you can play Gold Weather, but then they somehow sometimes create Ida off of Outlaw or something, and then you lose the game. And it's just it's kind of like the metagame and the way the game is right now, like which are the top decks, leads to very binary games where the amount of your decisions mattering doesn't matter as much as what deck you actually queue up into or what their deck is running or what your deck is running. And I think that's just kind of not a very good spot for the meta to be in.
Yeah, and we've seen some metas like this before. It's kind of like, you know, rock, paper, scissors a little bit. And the thing is that because there's these rock, paper, scissors matchups, you're kind of screwed even if you're not playing them, right? Like you and I were just saying we've been playing Consume and X-Men, but in reality, if you're playing Dwarfs and if you're, you know, teched for Consume and you don't find it, then your win rate's dipping. And if you're teched, you know, for outside of Consume and you do find it, then your win rate's dipping again. So even though you're not necessarily playing one of these matchups yourself, you're still kind of caught up in all of it, you know?
I think the biggest issue with dwarfs is that it spams a load of mid-range units, right?
Yeah.
Like you get a lot of points, but you get a lot of points in these kind of between 2 and 8 points typically. And then you can also then res the, you know, the dwarf that buffs itself. It doesn't boost, it buffs or it strengthens. And these are the kind of little things. Like I think, you know, for example, if the, I can't remember which dwarf it is, the one that you deal damage and then it strengthens by 3. If he didn't strengthen, if he boosted, then you wouldn't have this issue with the new dwarf that reses a dwarf, where they then res a 10 strength dwarf. It does 3 damage and becomes a 13. Like you can, there are maybe little ways that you can ameliorate it, but the biggest issue is that you're just playing, you know, a lot of 2s and 3s that then pull like 7s and 8s and 9s. So you can't really scorch it. It's not really swarm. So you can't really, I mean, the tech against it is what, like things like Tremors, but, you know, Ithlin Tremors is a dwarf tech. So, you know, if you're teching against it, you're basically either you're going to play Scoia'tael. And if you're playing Scoia'tael, the optimum strategy is to play dwarfs because other Scoia'tael decks just don't keep pace with it.
Yep. That's exactly right. And that's a large reason why dwarfs came on the scene like so strong at first.
I was playing around with this idea of playing a much more spell-focused deck that would sage back Tremors and renew for Ithlin to get another double Tremors. And I sure did win a round every game. Single round. The other round was a bit harder to do. It really is a problem because dwarves are very mid-rangey in general. Like again, they don't go tall and they don't go too wide. So, and they're not reliant on engines. That's the biggest thing. You can't run locks or removals either. So you're just left in like, let's try and outpoint them. And that's why you see the other binary greedy decks be good. X-Men, let's just play 60-point bronzes because opponent surely won't have weather clear. Let's just play 700-point bronze because weather is balanced. I mean, that's the game right now. And it's again, it's very linear gameplay. It's very binary win conditions, and there's not much you can do about it because there's no like meta techs that haven't been discovered yet, right?
Did all of us play in the closed beta?
I did not.
Oh, you did
I
not.
started playing like on the pre-Dagon patch that was the X-Men patch during the summer.
But you played closed beta, right, Shaggy?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Mecha
exactly.
was already balanced back then, right?
So a realization I had the other day was that we are in literally the same exact patch as the last one of closed beta, where Squirtle has a very proactive deck that plays big units and an OP gold that's kind of carrying it, and they just slam for efficient value, and you can't really counter their like value in any way. You can't really zap or control their stuff. You can't really scorch the stuff. And then on the other hand, you have monsters, which is basically the same consume deck it's always been. And if you tech against one, you lose against the other. And the play rate of Squirtle is like 70, and the play rate of Consume is like, the kind of remaining if you sort through all the miscellaneous. But it's basically the same exact meta. It's just, I don't know, that's just funny to me, but I have a sixth sense of humor.
I love that they took carryover off of Neckers, and Neckers is still getting played. These are the kind of things that I just find amusing. But what about Nilfgaard? I've been playing some Usurper. Usurper is so much fun. I've been playing some Usurper Alchemy, and honestly, it's one of those decks that is just kind of hilarious. You're like you're playing your Usurper, and you're like, which leader am I going to get this time? And I think it's really fun.
What do you hope for in Usurper Alchemy?
Oh, it depends. I was in against Consume, and I got Squeers, and then I got Ethne on my Mandrake, so I just kept playing things. I'll be like, banished. Oh, that's a nice brown warrior you got there. Let's just let it eat a bunch of things. Shame if I were to then ban it. Oh my god, it's so much fun. See, so sometimes you get great stuff. Typically you don't have a bad choice. Like I've had some pretty nice Jan Calvé, he's sometimes fun. You get full test sometimes, and especially running Kahir is kind of fun because you get to then double play it. So I think that deck is really entertaining to play. It's maybe not top tier, but it's more engaging than some of these other decks, because I feel like Dwarfs is boring. Consume is kind of boring, and Axeman takes too long to play.
And is also kind of boring.
Yeah, that too. But I love Axeman, so I can't say that. But yeah, what do we think about Nilfgaard?
Cursed Northern Realms with the Kadveni Revenant is my new favorite my new favorite card in the game. It's so sweet. Yeah. I've been playing some casual decks with the Spellslinger deck, and it's really fun.
Oh, confirmed. Shaggy's gonna bring Kirsten R to Gwent Open. Did everybody hear that? Everybody hear that? He's bringing it quickly. Tech against it. Call him on at Zikov. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I've been playing around with like some fun decks. The Shield deck is, I think, the most fun this patch that I've played. The Emir, the Knight, and buff it to Mandrake at the 24, and then just play 30-point round. That's really fun to play, and it's kind of a personal favorite of mine, because even previous patch I was doing the same thing, except by bouncing Nausicaa about 6 times beforehand. And killing a spy buff, it was strengthening it by 4 every single time. Those were fun times. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's many like tier 1 decks that are fun. What is it? I don't know. I don't have one. Please tell me. I want one. Give it to me.
I mean, I honestly don't remember any tier 1 deck being especially fun anytime ever. So I don't know.
The thing is, tier 1 decks, they're good because they're consistent, and consistent decks are boring. That's just kind of how it is. They're consistent, so you generally play the same game over and over again, right? That's the issue.
Sure, but I would kind of disagree. Like, I actually really enjoyed playing, say, the Raikou Armor NR, where you literally just ran Shani Stennis as a finisher in the thing. Because that one was really interesting, because even though you had the same game plan every game, say, for example, getting Commander's Horn out twice wasn't just, just play Commander's Horn, now play Ithni Commander's Horn. You had to think about positioning, because you also couldn't really swarm that many units into a single round. It wasn't like easy to get 5 units on a row. and then to also be able to say, play Commander's Horn, time Neneke in time where you can also set up your Shani finisher, and then also play Natalis. It wasn't the easiest thing ever to do, and you had to actually put quite a bit of thought into it, as well as what Neneke was actually going to hit. Was it correct to even go for the double Commander's Horn? Because, say, your first Commander's Horn could then potentially just be a 12 instead of a 20.
How you sequence the finisher of that deck back in the day was like one of the harder finishers to sequence, like absolutely.
Yeah. Currently, it's like, I'll just play Polly. Oh, Polly's still on board. Let me decoy him. Oh, Hattori Barclay. Nice. Got him.
No, I agree. Yeah. I mean, that deck was really fun to play. I also kind of have to go back on my statement a bit. Like, any deck that thins to 0 is really fun for me. Like, any deck where you really have to plan your stuff, and even better if you get to shuffle stuff back and thin that as well. Yeah. Like, that's the pinnacle of Gwent, if you get to thin to 0. In my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoy cards like a Seer Neneke very much because they encourage very specific type of deck building because, well, first of all, you can't just over-thin for no reason, right? Because why would you when you can just put other cards that don't thin into your deck? And so you have to find a way that, your 10-point or 11-point silver is actually worth playing. And that's really fun for me as a deck builder. So yeah, definitely thinning to 0 or even past 0 is amazing.
Crash, something you said earlier. I apologize for derailing, but you were saying Nausicaa Brigade. You were bouncing it over and over again. Were you doing that in the hand buff deck?
Hand? But yeah.
The
spotter deck. Yeah.
How big were you getting them?
I got Nausicaa Brigade to about how does it go? It goes to 9, 13, 17, 21. Yeah. So it was between 17 and 21. Though I was playing Mandrake, so it was actually probably between 19 and 23. It was between 19 and 23 most games. Sometimes it would only be a 15, right? But the thing is, I would be running like Gaunter to guarantee, drawing a card because I needed specific cards every single turn. I was playing around with playing Decoy to get another bounce in, but then realizing I can't actually ever have time to play Decoy because I would just get coralled or artifact compressioned. So I would have to bounce Nausicaa Brigade 3 times with, Emir and Kahir. And then, at the end of a round to win with it, and then assert it back into my deck, pick it up with Kahir or, Emir the following round, without the Nausicaa Brigade ever staying on board for my opponent to interact with. Because if they could interact with it, they would artifact compression it, and it would lead the deck to have a 10% win rate or something. But when it won, it was really, really fun.
Yeah, the sad thing is that people attacking against Consume, the presence of Consume kind of makes it worse because people are attacked against it, and even though those won't necessarily win you the game versus Consume, they sure will against hand buff.
At least you had fun, right? At least you had fun.
Yeah.
As a slight aside, I learned something today. So I'm gonna ask Swim. You have a Shupe plushie behind you, right? It's on the floor.
Oh.
Right, pick him up. Pick him up. I got a question for you. Pick him up, and we'll get him for the camera. I'll get mine as well. Right, tell me when you're back.
What's your question?
Does your Shupe plushie have an asshole? That is the question.
Are you actually gonna make me check?
Yeah.
Did someone? Where?
Because my Shupe plushie has a bumhole, and I discovered this today, and it's the funniest thing. So officially, Shupe has a bumhole, which I think is great. Yep. Well, see. Sorry, I realize this is completely unrelated to the current meta, but I found this out.
No, this is very related to the current meta, Jaggerous. This is the current meta.
Yeah. So yeah, there you go. That's official from CDPR. The trolls have bumholes, in case anyone was curious. So, speaking of Shupe, how do we feel about Shupe in the current meta?
It's kind of fallen off a bit. It's basically just like a worse variation of dwarfs. It's kind of surprisingly competitive, but I mean, in reality, that's mostly because it's being carried by the silvers and some of the golds. I don't know. And dwarfs doesn't really play for high synergy. I don't know. I haven't actually seen it in a while. I think mostly because I've actually like climbed in the last several days. But I imagine it's still pretty prevalent, like, at kind of like a certain rank.
Yeah, it's quite prevalent in Pro Ladder.
The main thing I dislike about Shupe is the charm option, like that it charms a random enemy. That leads to some pretty awkward situations sometimes. Like you're playing Consume with a 40-point guy on your board and he plays Shupe, and his only way to win is to high roll the charm. And yeah, that's the main thing I dislike about the cards. Otherwise, it's super fun.
You have to find the charm and then you have to hit their unit.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
I guess it's a little bit awkward because some of his other options, like the one where you weather every row, is strong, or like random hazard on every row. But you want to play that at the start of a turn, whereas with the charm, you want to play it right at the end of the turn when they have something really big. So it's kind of awkward in terms of the timing of Shupe as to whether you play him early to get certain effects or play him late to get other effects.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's very kind of RNG dependent, I guess.
It's definitely, I think, a sign of kind of where the meta is, that the meta is so about playing these kind of proactive, like low synergy, high value, high tempo things that you're actually able to have a Shupe deck that's in a reasonably competitive place, just because it's effectively very similar to the playstyle of the Dwarfs deck we are seeing at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just Shupe as a card, though, the payoff for the card is like sometimes you get a 26 to 30 point gold, yeah. If you're lucky, which is admittedly good, but when golds on average are hitting 20 fairly reliably and you've got Ithlin hitting like 40 sometimes, it's not a good enough payoff to then be playing every single card otherwise that's like down 2 points on average or something. And it's just like, yeah, no, why would you do this? Because as soon as you play Shupe to win one round, you're not winning another one unless, you high roll.
I mean,
they renew, or is he doomed?
I think that the sad realization, and this is something that I kind of realized when playing the Shupe deck for a good while, and honestly, I expect that I wasn't the only one to realize, but I mean, you don't really need Shupe, right? Like, I won tons of games just by outvaluing, like, a majority of my games. I didn't even draw Shupe or play Shupe for any unique value. It just, like, basically outvaluing them with your bronzes, and that just kind of speaks to, like, how it's even found a home in these kinds of decks.
So moving on, the other thing we're going to talk about a little bit more is the Gwent Open number 3, which is taking place, I believe, on around the 20th of January. Let me look at a calendar.
I don't know. Quick. I wasn't invited.
20th. Oh, so then you don't care about it. Is that how this works? So,
no,
okay.
No. I would have known the date if I was. Well, actually, I still might not have known then.
Yeah, 20th and 21st. So I guess we can discuss the participants a little bit. Obviously, Shaggy's here and he is taking part. We also have Adzakov, Kolomon, Hannah-chan, Game King, Iceloth, Super JJ, and Camel. I don't know how to say.
Shmail.
I
think Shmail. Yeah.
Okay, I can get behind Shmail. So
Bumblebee.
Predictions first and foremost: is Adzakov going to break the round 1 curse?
No.
Crash is like, nope.
No.
Wait. Why don't you think so?
Because it's a meme. Memes never die.
Memes never die.
I mean,
I'm gonna say yes because he's gonna have to break the curse eventually. I think. I mean,
yeah,
he's lost in the first round due to a combination of bad luck and some misplays in the past tournaments. But eventually, he's gonna have to win a round, right?
But see, Shaggy, he doesn't.
This is where he
never has to.
This is where he goes up against Shaggy, and Shaggy has to decide whether he's going to go with his prediction. Or he's like, "Oh, sorry, Adzakov. I thought you were going to do it this time, but I guess I'll have to beat you." I hope he does, if only because I keep calling him the Krillin of Gwent, and I can't stop calling him the Krillin of Gwent until he actually wins.
Yamcha.
I didn't watch that show.
I don't know, like
because Krillin was actually good.
No, Krillin just died. Like, Krillin dies a lot.
Oh my god.
I'm just kidding.
But no, I think Azakov is a fairly strong player, and I think he's maybe like choking now. And the thing is, I think it gets worse each time because each time he loses, there's more pressure, and maybe that's the issue. Because if you have the reputation where you lose all the time, I think it does get to you. And a lot of tournaments, I think, it's like mind games. Would you say, Shaggy?
If he gets worse every time he loses, then he crashes right. He's never gonna win.
I mean, how do you find tournament nerves, Shaggy? Do you find it okay, or do you feel like it's harder to play at LAN than at home?
I mean, of course, it's harder at LAN, but yeah, I mean, it's okay if you're used to it. It really doesn't get to you that much anymore. I mean, of course, there's gonna be one or the other tournament blunder in your career, but I mean, yeah, it's always a different thing from playing at home. You're always like more on the spot. It's a bit tougher.
So I guess that means that Schmel, I've already forgotten what he's called, Schmel, anyway, Schmel, that he'll maybe have a harder time because he's the only one, I believe, who hasn't been to a LAN.
Yes, I think that's correct. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. For those of you who didn't play closed beta, he was kind of like an old school. He played a ton back then. He was famous for popularizing or maybe coming up with the like Okvist. Was it dry passing? I think it was like
yeah. Passing. I mean, turn 1 dry pass is called the Schmel pass, I think.
Yeah.
In certain circles, at least.
Yeah, and he used Okvist, then he memed around, and it was actually, he came up with like a very, very competent Skellige deck, which, back in the day was not an easy feat, I'll tell you.
So we also have Sloth, and I guess I'll group Sloth and Colamon together as they're maybe less well known than some of the other names on this list. They do, they have competed before. Colamon, I believe, was like, he came second at Challenger.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's coming back from that, and Sloth, I believe, has been in a couple opens as well. So how do we think, like Sloth especially, he basically stole it from Telbot, because on the final day of Pro Ladder just decided that like he's put on his tryhard panties and freaking went and like climbed the ladder, and like, because the thing is, they had quite a comfortable buffer, didn't they? It was like 80 points, 80 MMR or something buffer. Like everyone was feeling quite like, it's time to go to bed. And then in the morning, I'll wake up and I'll qualify for Gwent Open. And then Sloth was like, I see that you want to qualify for Gwent Open. Would be a shame if someone were to ruin that. And it just went ham. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Sloth's been around for a while. He was most popular for his kind of Eridan list back in the day that was actually at the time of Gwent Open 1 as well, although that was just the deck that he made. And honestly, he might be a little kind of like underrated, but definitely some real dark horse potential, because I know him to be like a very, very solid player. And of course, Colamon has shown himself, in Challenger 2, and I think a lot of people are excited to see him play again.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like Colamon really like grew a fan base with the Challenger play that he showed, because he played really, really well.
Yeah.
And people were saying he's a really good player, but nobody knows of him. Like
exactly.
Pro players were saying that. He showed up. He actually showed up in Challenger. Like he played really well, and that was his first like big tourney appearance, as far as I'm aware. And so, I mean, obviously he lost to Freddy because I prepped with Freddy. But the point is, Colamon was, yes, exactly. But the point is, Colamon, really good player, and I can't wait to see how he does in Open, because I think he's probably one of the top 2-3 players there, in my opinion.
Yep, completely agree.
So who did you prep with this time, Crash, so we know who's going to win?
Crash, send me a dex, please.
Yeah, sure.
Give me dex,
my
give me good
bounce.
I'm gonna bring it, man.
Oh god.
But speaking of prepping, we also have Super JJ, and he is guaranteed to be prepping with Life Coach. And Life Coach is known for taking tournaments very seriously. He was actually, I think, a favorite to win Challenger, although got knocked out. So
Freddy.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. But Freddy's not here this time, so maybe Super JJ has a decent chance. What do we think?
We have Crash practice with him.
The question is, can Super JJ break his semi-final curse? Because I don't think he's made it past the semi-finals in any tournament he's played.
Mm.
It's kind of hard to say. I mean, I personally think that Super JJ is a great player. I think when it comes to playing, like, just the raw experience of having like played card games for so long and been to so many lands does absolutely matter. And I mean, like you were saying, he does have a bit of a curse where I honestly think he's one of the players that has been underperforming a little bit just in terms of the results of these tournaments, a little more than he should. I think he's a good player.
I like how people are like life coaches in Japan, so that precludes him from from playing with Super JJ. So I don't know. I feel like they play a lot together. I think like realistically, they'll have talked decks and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Gwent is a board game. You play it on the table. If life coach is in Japan, how could he possibly play with Super JJ?
Yeah,
I mean,
you'd need a really, really big table, Jaggerous.
Yeah. I have no idea how Raikou plays.
Do you know
being in Japan?
do you know how long letters take to arrive from Japan to Austria, Germany, whichever one?
Oh yeah, because that's how they. Oh my bad. I'm sorry. I apologize. Speaking of Asia in general, we also have Hana-chan, who's representing the East. Do you think he's gonna start to shine? I think in previous tournaments he's not done so well. So maybe is this his time to shine? Are we gonna give Europe a run for his money for their money? In fairness, America is not in this tournament at all. So.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't count Hana-chan out at all. I mean, he's performed, I think, really well in the tournaments he's played. He's got knocked out early in both, but he's shown that he's a really good player. So I think he's got a good chance as well.
Is that everyone? Oh no, Game King.
Game King is the last one. Yep, and of course, Game King is a bit of a favorite. He came on the scene pretty early. He won. Was it two different? Didn't he win two things?
Gwent Slams. I believe he won 2 Gwent Slams.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, he's largely regarded as a top player. I don't know, I'm actually curious on your opinion of him, Crash.
I mean, he's a good player, obviously, but like, I don't know, like. I haven't watched every single match, and from the matches that I've watched, I haven't noticed Game King doing anything spectacular. Now, I've been told there were other matches that I haven't watched where he played amazingly, but I didn't watch those, sadly. So, I don't know, like, he's obviously a contender. All of the 8 people here obviously are, like, let's not joke around here. All of these players are really, 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 really good, and they could all win, no questions asked, and nobody like I wouldn't be surprised at any one of them winning. I'm just thinking like, the minimal 0.1% additional chance or whatever you want to like minimize it by, and Game King's maybe like 3-4, like the third or the fourth there. I would say that I wouldn't put him as the top contender. I don't think.
Yeah, I think he has the propensity to bring some like very original decks. We've seen him do that, I think, at least 2 times, where you can get some real surprise value with like a certain deck or a certain lineup that people really aren't expecting. And I think, I mean, if he's able to find like something like that, you can absolutely gain like a real advantage.
Okay, so I think we have to make predictions, and while we make our predictions, we'll also ask chat if they have any viewer questions to post them in the chat at Gwentlemen, and we got a little bit of time to answer your questions. Specifically, if you have any questions for Shaggy or Crash, now is your chance to get them in, or just questions in general about anything, really. So yeah, Swim, who do you think is going to win?
I like Colamon.
The fair prediction. Crash.
Same.
Shaggy. I guess Shaggy would have to say Shaggy, right? Like,
well, he doesn't have to.
No. If you want to try the modest, like, no, look how modest I am, then you can predict somebody else and then act like,
Yeah, I think Sloth is gonna win. Sloth is my spirit animal. Yeah.
There we go. That's how you do
it. See, I think it'll be. I'm gonna go Super JJ. I think he'll take it.
Okay,
that's my prediction.
We're getting our first viewer question coming in. How does Crash keep his hair so luscious? I've actually held back the desire to ask him that myself. You've got very silky hair, Crash.
I take care of it very meticulously. In this sense, I don't wash it daily, That's what you don't do. You don't shampoo your hair daily because it's gonna kill it. It's gonna kill all the natural oils in it, and it's just gonna make your hair a mess and not nice, and it's not gonna have any volume, and it's not gonna be, soft. I mean, you could also just have shitty natural hair, but I like to pretend it's not genetics and it's something I'm doing.
At the same time, you do have to wash your hair occasionally. Like I think you don't wash your hair every day, but do wash your hair sometimes.
Yes, don't not wash your hair either. Do use shampoo and conditioner when you wash them in that order, not the opposite order either. Just not every day, please. Thank you.
What's
we need some Crash hair tutorials. Like that's the next article on Gwentlemen. It'll be like I would read that.
I would definitely read that. I mean, I could use some tips myself. Let me tell you that.
Okay, so let's find some more questions before we end up down the hair washing rabbit hole.
I think it's too late for that, Jaggerous. We were down that hole before we began. Here we go. What balance changes would you propose to make Gwent less boring? It's an interesting question. I mean, it's less about balance changes at that point and more about just trying to have a certain design idea. I mean, I guess you wouldn't promote such linear gameplay as dwarfs in such a powerful way, probably. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Make more good cards.
I think
Yeah.
One of the problems with Gwent, and part of the reason it might be boring at times, is because it does come down to a little bit of that kind of rock, paper, scissors problems Crash and I were talking about before. And you could easily try to alleviate that by having kind of more powerful options that are able to deal with certain strategies that aren't committed to dealing with those strategies. One of the problems with Consume is that all of the cards that counter Consume punish you for running it in anything else against any other matchup, right? Like you can't run like cards like Scorch and Marjo because they're just not good cards unless you're hitting what you want to hit with them, and that doesn't have to be so much the case.
I don't actually agree with you here. Like I think more counters in this specific way are not good for the game. I don't want more swears in the game. I'm not
saying more. I'm saying better.
See, that's a problem already because swears is again extremely binary. Now, swears being good versus other decks would just make it worse. Like if it was worse versus Consume, but better versus other decks, I think that would be a better approach to it. I think a better thing is just have more good decks. So Hearthstone isn't the pinnacle of balance, nowhere close, right? But if you've got 3 decks battling for who's the best deck or whatever, you literally have a rock, paper, scissors scenario. Deck A beats deck B, etc., etc. If you have 7 or 8 decks that doing that thing, then you have a much more, balanced-ish approach, kind of hopefully at the very least, right? Where you have okay matchups. I mean, maybe it's still going to be completely binary, and now you're just hoping to hit one of 3 matchups instead of, one of 2. But it's like, if you just kind of balance the power to be about equalish across the board, rather than have, these very strong decks here and then just kind of bad decks here, the whole option of what you can play also makes the game more fun because you're not limited to 1 or 2 deck types. You're limited to, 7 deck types, and that inherently just makes the game more fun. And you don't see the same decks as often either, so variety increases. And I think that's a really big thing for Gwent. Variety needs to go up, like way up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of like the weaker decks just kind of coming up in power. I feel like it's very dangerous to just have like such a limited amount of like top tier decks.
Shaggy, thoughts?
Yeah, I think in general, like moving away from very binary matchups and very, very hard counters and moving more to like soft counters and more, I want to say balanced matches would be a great thing. I don't really know how it can be achieved, but like Swim, you said earlier that we don't really want to encourage like just pure point spamming like dwarves, but like the other end is also not really great, like encouraging something like consume, which is
or no
like either
spies.
you have the answer or you lose, is also not great. So
yeah,
I mean it's a really tough
it's a fine
topic. And
balance.
I'm happy that I'm not a game designer, to be honest, because like finding the answers to this kind of stuff is really tough.
I think part of it is having decks like improving the engines, for example, because Dwarfs doesn't really have an engine, so you'd maybe want to look into that. But at the same time, looking at things like Moonlight and Armor and Reveal and those kind of cards, and maybe fleshing them out a bit more so they're a little bit more like consuming, that there's a lot of cards that you can actually run that synergize nicely together, because those kind of decks are always the kind of fun, and at the same time they can be countered, because if you have a particular engine that's particularly strong, there's usually a card that you can play that'll stop it. And I think that will help in some ways to make the game more fun, because I think having different kinds of archetypes be more prevalent is good. And things like Moonlight and Armor, for example, really do feel like they're kind of lacking.
Yeah.
So another thing to consider is that, like, when you mentioned engines, for example, that's a really good point. Gwent right now, especially with dwarves being so prevalent, is because Gwent is purely a numbers game in a sense. The deck that can pump out numbers the best is kind of the best deck. That's not kind of always the case, but in general, the philosophy of the game that holds true. And when you look at types of decks, seeing an Impera Brigade hitting like 18 points or whatever doesn't feel that bad, because you could potentially stop it, you can prevent spy combos, you can lock it, you can remove it before it reaches those levels now, because it's reactive in design. You can't really always do that, but Farseer, for example, you can stop. With dwarves, they just pump out 15-point bronzes or 14-point bronzes or whatever every single turn, and there's no way to stop that. And so other decks that might potentially do a similar thing, like Temerians, Maisling's list, that do similar things as dwarves, completely get bullied out just because the numbers on dwarves are 1 to 2 points higher on every play. And when that happens, it's really bad when you've got like 3 or 4 or 5 mid-range decks in your game, but only one sees play because it's strictly better than all the others. So either you need to make all mid-range decks without engines and whatnot be extremely equal in power, on average bronze power at least, or give them a lot more optional power in their silvers and golds. Again, dwarves would win here because Ithlan Tremors and Meditation exist and whatnot in Shiru. But again, cards like DJ or cards like Shani, in SK, you've got him, etc., Coral, for example. Cards that give you optional power in certain metas, more of those would be great, because then even if your average point play is lower, you can still be the best deck just because you can deal with the other threats in the field better. So if Consume is super prevalent, a mid-range, SK deck could be better than Dwarves just because it has Coral and, other cards that are similar. So yes, those are other potential things to look into.
Yep. And we have one more question. Speaking of faction diversity as a good metric of, meta health and balance, wouldn't we say that the midwinter update, the pre-midwinter update patch, where Nilfgaard spies were maybe the strongest, but there was still a pretty good diversity right under them, were much more healthy? I'm kind of curious what you guys think about that, because Crash, you were saying earlier that you were not a fan of spies in that meta, but towards the second half, after the 20 card patch, I feel like it really mostly ended up stabilizing, with spies maybe being like slightly above the others, but a relatively even playing field.
The meta itself was actually quite good, and spies were the best deck, right? The reason I personally didn't like the patch, and it's just because I hated playing spies. Spies are my most hated deck to have played, because I would play Emissary and I wouldn't chain Emissaries, or I would chain Emissaries and I would get Enforcers, and it wasn't my fault. The game just didn't give it to me. I just didn't roll good enough because apparently I wasn't a good enough player, right? And that was really frustrating to me to play. That was my only problem. Balance-wise, I think we had a lot of decks that were either tier 1 or close to tier 1. And we had a lot of decks that were soft counters, not specifically very hard counters, but rather it had a good win rate versus spies. Like swarm monsters had a good win rate versus spies, and then like Peter in spies didn't completely destroy the swarm consume monster list. It just gave spies a better chance to win, and it was nice. It was refreshing because it wasn't just like, oh, I've won this game now because I rolled this matchup. I was like, yes, I have a higher chance of winning now. Let me play good, And I think the balance in the previous patch was actually better, as much as I dislike spies personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think last patch was we had a really diverse meta, and it was like better than this patch, the balance in general.
Yep. Anyway, sorry.
I was going to say. I was going to say the only issue really with the spies meta was that it went on for way too long. Like, it was a great meta. You had lots of decks, but the thing is, we had a patch. It didn't really change much. So then we had about like 4 months of spies. And that's, I think, where it gets a bit tedious. Because imagine we have 4 months of dwarfs. Think about that.
Imagine 4 months of Dagon.
Oh, well, everyone loves Dagon.
I'm remembering 4 months of Dagon.
Yeah, and it was the best 4 months of my life, man.
Oh my god, dude. Anyway, that's going to be all the time we have for this week's show. I'd like to thank our guests Crash and Shaggy for coming on. Now, boys, where can we find you? / is there anything you would like to plug? This is that time. Shaggy.
You can find me on Twitter /ShaggyGwent, and I just want to give a quick shout out to everyone who contributes to the Gwent community.
Yeah,
that's a lot of people.
Yeah, they're all important, man.
Crash?
How am I gonna shout out thousands of people? Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Crash_Overlord and on Twitch Crash_Overlord. Stream daily. Yeah, shout outs to Gwentlemen for being so gentlemanly.
I agree. I'm very gentlemanly. I do my best. You okay?
Me or Crash? Because neither of us
Crash.
is okay right now.
Yes, I'm gonna say yes. Swim, do you have anyone to shout out or plug?
Oh, me. Okay, yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to Twitch chat. Keep doing what the hell are you guys doing? Yeah, that's it. Jaggerous?
That's it. Okay, well, I mean, things to plug. I don't know. Shout outs to Jens Unicorn, because I think that's a great account name. I always pick someone in chat, shout them out. So Jens Unicorn, shout out to you. And with that, I guess we have nothing else to say. Let's see what Shupe has to say. He says, "Oh, shiny." Okay. And on that note, I guess we will wave awkwardly at the camera.
Wolves asleep amidst the trees.